good afternoon, namaste, assalamu alaikum, and welcome to Knowledge Webcast. And I have with us we have Stephanie Barnes, and she's one of the very senior, experienced, knowledge management professional, artist, and also an entrepreneur. And one of the key, something special about her is about the chief chaos organizer. That rings a sound in my. Let's go over to Stephanie and talk to her and understand what is this chief chaos organizer and more about her and what are the work she's doing in KM field and more. Good morning, Stephanie, and welcome to Knowledge Webcast. It's such a pleasure to have you here today. Firstly, I want to directly get into question as to chief chaos organizer. What is this? I mean, it's
yeah, that's a title I gave myself after I'd been in business on my own for a few years. I'd used the sort of standard title, president, CEO, whatever, managing director, whatever, and didn't really speak to me as to really describing what I do with knowledge management. And so I thought about a chief chaos organizer. That's me. And it's interesting because I went away from it a few years ago when I started focusing more on radical knowledge management, and I've put creativity in my title somewhere. And it's like, no, absolutely radical knowledge management is my thing, but I'm still chief chaos organizer. And I think that's because knowledge is a bit chaotic. And as much as we try and organize it and put it in repositories and do all these processes around it, it's just by its nature going to be chaotic. There's always going to be something new coming up, something different that doesn't fit in the boxes that we've arranged. And so part of what I do is then helping organizations and people understand what to do with that, and even more so with radical knowledge management, because the world has become more chaotic.
I would definitely agree with you with the pandemic concept of pandemic. I think the chaos, as you mentioned, is more apparent and it's become an existential challenge for every human being. So yeah, very interesting. So I want to learn more about how did you start this knowledge management? Like, was it by choice or was it choose? Like it just happened by accident? Like how did you start? And maybe a bit about your journey in this field. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I actually have an undergrad in accounting and an MBA in IT. So I did not start out in knowledge management. In fact, when I did my degrees, knowledge management wasn't really a thing at all. And I kind of evolved into it. I found accounting wasn't my thing, and IT is very much a part of what I do still. The knowledge management, I got into HP, actually Hewlett Packard, after I did my MBA, and got into their consulting organization. And that was real. Sorry?
When was that?
Oh, 97. I started HP in 98. Yeah. So the consulting organization was 97, 98, something like that, 99, late 90s. And I kind of said to them, well, where are your reusable deliverables? Because I'd come from accounting and we hadn't called it knowledge management in accounting, but we had all these checklists and all these, repeatable things that we had to go and collect knowledge and interview people and reuse the previous year's file and all this kind of stuff in doing the audits and tax returns. Okay. And so I was used to having all of this sort of reusable deliverable stuff. And I got into the consulting organization and I said, so where's your reusable deliverables? And they're like, oh no, you just have to ask, find somebody that's done that engagement before and, hope that they'll share their stuff with you. And I'm like, but you're HP. How can you not have these systems? And of course, by the late 90s, knowledge management was becoming a thing. And so I went and did, a couple of courses and attended workshops and whatever, conferences and things, and just kind of evolved in it. It was a squeaky wheel gets the grease kind of thing. So I was the one asking questions and showing an interest. And so, so for the last 4 years that I was at HP, I had various knowledge management roles, and then left there in 2003 and ended up going out on my own. I had always thought that I would be self-employed. I was going to have an accounting firm because I was an accountant, thought I was going to be an accountant. Thank God that didn't happen, because I'm not sure that I would have been happy with that.
I'm happy too for that. Yes.
Yeah, the knowledge management, radical KM is definitely my thing more than accounting ever was.
Yes, yes.
And so I was like, well, here I am out on my own. I know all this stuff that nobody else knows because I've spent 4 years implementing it. And it was starting to gain more traction. So I just started consulting and it stuck. So I've been self-employed as a knowledge management consultant for what's this, 2022. So
22, yeah.
Almost 20 years now. So it'll be 19 years this year. So and worked with lots of people, worked with lots of organizations, written a couple of books and some articles and things, and spoken at lots of conferences and traveled. So yeah, so it's
excellent journey.
Good.
The fact I say it's an excellent journey because even from my own experience, my peers, and I mean previously who were my peers, no individual spends so long in a specific domain where it is not about, you do not have like other fields. There's a growth, like you become the head, and that kind of growth is not in knowledge management, and people are not able to stick to this domain. So that's why I say this is a very fantastic journey to be in this field and contributing and working and making it, creating value for organization is extremely important.
Yeah, in knowledge management, it's an interesting field. There's a lot of churn in it. There's a lot of people coming and going that think that they understand it and find that they don't, or think that it's really cool and then find out how hard it is. And yes. So yeah, there's a lot, and it is all of those things. But I love all of those things, so maybe that's why I've stayed. The chaos doesn't worry me.
No, chaos is interesting. That's what is working for you, I guess.
Yeah, it is.
So that's really excellent. I mean, yeah. So now one of the things which I've been lately hearing around you, the buzz is about radical KM, and that is also something which I picked. Maybe about a few, from past 1 year or something, which I picked, I think, about radical KM, and also KMI offers course on this side. That is one thing which I saw, right?
Yes.
Couple of days, right? So, so that is one reason why I wanted to really, get in touch with you and really understand what is this radical KM. I mean, because for people to understand what is KM itself is a challenge. Now you're coming up with radical KM. So
yes.
So now, firstly, you have to define your KM. How you perceive, or what do you define KM, and how do you talk about this radical along with it, with this your own definition of KM? I mean, that would be interesting to learn.
So I've always defined knowledge management as giving people the knowledge they need to do their jobs, or facilitating the knowledge so that people can do their jobs. And so I started off with a combination of people, process, and technology, because it's not one or the other, and it's not people and process against technology, which you see a lot of in knowledge management. It's all three of them aligned together, working together to produce the results. Right. And that's a tough thing to juggle, to balance, right? But that's what I did at HP. It's what I've done with my clients since, and it works. So there takes a lot of communication and a lot of patience and perseverance and curiosity, but it absolutely works. And so, but about 10 years ago, a little bit more than 10 years ago now, actually, because it's 2011, I was at a leadership workshop as a participant, and we did this painting activity, and I was like, oh, this is fun. How do I do more of this? How can I bring this into knowledge management? Because I think knowledge management needs this. So that's where it got started for me, and the idea of radical knowledge management. And I call it creative knowledge management for the first, up until the end of 2020. I called it, before September 2020, I was calling it creative KM. And in September 2020, I had this, transformational experience and realized that Radical KM was really what it needed to be called. And that started to really speak to people in a way that Creative KM hasn't. Although with KMI, the course we do is called Creative KM because it's more descriptive and helps people understand better, what it is about rather than Radical KM. But it's my Radical KM stuff. So Radical KM is still all the people, process, and technology. It just is adding in creativity because creativity has been educated out of us. And yet that's a big part of how we deal with chaos and VUCA. So with the volatility and uncertainty and complexity and ambiguity that we're now faced with is by tapping into our inner artist, our inner creativity that's been buried and put in a box someplace and said, oh no, businesses say, oh, we don't need that stuff here. We just need all the people of process and technology and that's enough. And we don't need any of that creative stuff. No, that's not
uniformity.
For us.
We want uniformity and standardization everywhere. And
yes. Yeah. So if it doesn't fit in one of these nice little boxes, we don't care. And yet the magic and the innovation happens in between the boxes, right? It happens in the integration space between all of these things, not in one of the boxes or one of the other, whatever. So you need the white space, you need that time for reflection. And so that's what radical knowledge management is about, is creating that space. And then people get a bit freaked out about that, and I'm like, no, we don't need to make this harder than it needs to be. Just introduce, don't freak out. It's okay. This is little small things, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Start your meetings with a guided meditation, especially, during everybody working home and going from Zoom meeting to Zoom meeting. You take 3 minutes at the beginning of the meeting, do a little guided meditation just to calm everybody down and center them and get them focused. It's so nice. People are so appreciative of taking the 3 minutes, and makes the meetings more engaging and productive, and because people are focused, and that's 3 minutes of a guided meditation, there's other little, drawing games and other little things that we can do too to help with brainstorming and whatever, in a meeting, but it doesn't have to be a big thing. It just is about shifting people's ideas and mindsets for a few minutes, encouraging them to take a walk at lunchtime, or I've had clients set up, little businesses before the pandemic, set up a little corner in one of their areas with some art materials and go and draw and do, play with some paints, just to get your head out of whatever boxes it's in. So that's what Radical KM is about, just reintroducing the idea of creativity. And it has these big impacts, these little tiny things, and it's so worth it. So, and it's so interesting to watch people's attitudes shift and their confidence shift. And in the class and in the workshops and stuff that I do, we paint, which freaks a lot of people out. But it's fun, and there's a lot to be learned from that around iterating, around curiosity and painting. I use painting partly because lots of people have baggage, bad feelings, negative things about it from, art class when they were a kid, they couldn't paint a tree, or they couldn't paint something that looked like something, and somebody criticized it, and that was it. But, so getting people to paint and do things that they've been previously criticized for, and helping them realize that the floor doesn't open up and swallow them whole because they got brown in their yellow, and it's okay. You can recover from brown in your yellow and figure out what to go do and do next, and how to complete the painting. And it's the same, we talk about this in the workshops in the class. Okay. This then transfers over to other things, right? Because we all say or do things that we didn't intend to happen. And so then how do you recover from that? And so those are the discussions. And so there are all these transferable behaviors that we explore using art, and then talk about how it transfers over to other things, to the PowerPoint slide deck and the Word, document and the Excel spreadsheet and project management problems you're having, or, whatever. So, but we use art as a metaphor, then, as a way to explore some of these things.
Excellent. So if I have to kind of paraphrase in one sentence, you're bringing art to the life of corporate life. I mean, I think
absolutely.
I think that's quite out of the box thinking, and that's why you call yourself the radical KM.
Yeah.
So, and I can see that even your background is full colorful and full of art.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
well, and the other thing about Radical KM, why I named it Radical KM, and I didn't realize this when I actually picked the name, but Radical is about going back to our roots. And so part of now, I said my definition of knowledge management was helping people have the knowledge that they need to do their jobs. So the environment has changed. The knowledge management environment has changed. Our corporate environment has changed. Our organizational environments have changed. Yeah. They are much more VUCA, to use that acronym again.
Yes.
So part of what people need to do their jobs is being able to be flexible. It's not about stocks and flows of knowledge anymore. It's about being flexible and being curious and learning, continuously learning. And so again, this is where Radical comes in, is about going back to our roots of how we play or how we learn, which is through play and through curiosity and experimentation. And again, that's what I do with art.
Yeah.
So
in fact, in our culture, I mean, art takes a center stage around which civilizations are built. So in capital world, there's economy built. Now you're putting the art back.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's really good. And there's something which some of the work we also do on creativity as work. I'm sure this is also, you do a lot of stuff. Now, if you have to kind of, give me in 3 steps or 5 steps or 10 steps, that one thing which any person who sees this video can go back and do this, take this philosophy of radical KM into their offices, into their project. What is that one practice you would recommend?
They were only going to do one thing, I would say start your meetings with a guided meditation.
Okay.
That's excellent. What I would do.
All
if you're going to do 2 things, I would say do the guided meditation and do scribble drawings, which was my first thing. And because the scribble drawings were really interesting, and I was so afraid the first time that I did them in a workshop. I was just in a requirements analysis workshop for putting together a knowledge management strategy for an organization. And the Radical KM, or the workshops are always really process oriented. They're really intense. They're really dull.
So you're really focusing on the human, the cognitive aspects of it, and you're bringing out the, removing.
Absolutely. And so when I did these little scribble drawings that again take 5 minutes, and the energy in the room shifted and people's engagement shifted, and I got so much better answers, into the questions, and put together the requirements for the strategy, So it's kind of like when I started in KM, I described knowledge management not as something separate from the organization. It's got to be embedded in the processes, in the daily activities.
True.
And it's the same with creativity and the art stuff that I talk about. It's not something separate. It's not in a box over here on the side that we do when we have time. It's part of the process. It's part of how we work.
Yeah. Way of life.
It's a way of life.
Corporate way of life. Then something, external coming and telling you what to do. It should not be.
Yeah.
So excellent. I mean, that's. I think that is exactly what I think is required in this, pandemic times, because earlier it was much easier for communication where you are within the perimeter. I mean, perimeter of, you have your colleagues around you, and you could talk formally, informally, and there was a connection and belongingness of a team or organization. The more people are now working in, isolation or 4 walls of virtual world, I think with this art, I think it connects back to the humanness in the corporate. I guess I think it's really amazing. That's really, really good. And let me also tell one of the important thing. I think here you are all. I think, last 20 years, we have been only hearing KM IT systems. I think now we are moving back to the important thing of human mind. And that's exactly what you're doing, trying to bring into patients. It's not only people, now we are really going into the cognitive process and behavior of people. So that's very important. I think that's why the whole thing, right? Source of culture and challenges and constraints. Yes.
And people ask me about, knowledge management and AI, right? AI is the big thing. Machine learning, AI, that's it's going to save the world. It's not.
I'm completely with you on this. Yes. Yeah,
it's humans that are going to do that. It's and it's not the technology. The technology is great, and it has its uses. I'm not saying that, but it's interesting that my paper was Radical Knowledge Management was published in an AI journal. And so one of the comments I got back from the reviewer was like, you don't mention AI in this. And no, I don't. And the person who had asked me to submit the article, knew that. And so I ended up putting in a line, a couple of sentences in the article that says, that I take a contrarian view to AI. Creativity is what separates us from humans from the technology. And so I'm going to focus on the human side of it and creativity, and that's radical knowledge management. So that made the reviewer happy. He signed off. I think it was a man, I don't know, but the reviewer signed off, and and the paper got published. So, but I had to kind of laugh. So, but on the other hand, people have found me because they're looking for AI and KM and come across my paper, and it's like, oh, wait, she's onto something. So it's the other thing that I had mentioned about the creativity stuff is all these behaviors that we learn through being creative, tapping into helping us being more resilient, see the big picture, be curious, look at, relationships between things. Are all these behaviors help make us sustainable, help us look at things outside of the box and realize the impact that this has on the world that we live in. So by introducing creativity, that's introducing people to these behaviors that have been, again, educated out of them because the creativity has been lost, and helping them see the world as a whole and not as something that's inside a box. And so it makes us more sustainable and helps with sustainable leadership and all these kinds of things. So it's, it kind of, creativity really taps into a lot of things, touches onto a lot of things, makes us whole.
No, that's absolutely a brilliant idea. And one of the things apart from this, I want to move to the next topic, which is more of digital transformation. Now there's a lot of digital transformation, and there's a huge, the whole world is talking about digital transformation. Now you have radical KM, we add KM, you have radical KM, now creativity aspects, and you have digital transformation. Now, how does digital transformation or KM all work together, come together? So more from the commercial aspect, because today, most of the organization, when we say KM, they may not be able to relate. But the moment you mention digital transformation, that is something which every organization is, the next, buzzword in the industry, right? So what's your take on this? And I know you might have a different, I'm really looking forward to what you say here.
See, and I think largely digital transformation is KM.
That's great to hear.
Because, well, it is. And I said that because I've done some projects with organizations and they've called it a digital transformation project. And yet when I've looked at the requirements, it's like, this is KM, because it's all about transferring knowledge and sharing knowledge and collaborating and, and helping people have the knowledge they need to do their jobs, So call it digital transformation if you want. I don't care. We've had this debate for as long as I've been in KM. It's probably going to, continue for years after I'm not doing KM anymore. Whether KM is the right name for it or not. And it's like, so I always say to people, I don't care what you call it. This is what we're going to do.
The essence of our work is that, right?
So yeah,
really good, actually. So that's really good, because See, one of the challenges which I'm seeing in terms of, especially when it comes to knowledge management standards, now that we have something, there's how I do not know exactly what is your take on this standard, and probably you could share your opinion. It's, I mean, either whether you talk far of it or against of it, it's absolutely fine here. I mean, this is just an open discussion, and maybe, yeah, we can start with that, and then probably I can form other questions around that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not really in favor of the standard, I have to say. Okay. I understand why we have it, why it was developed. I'm not sure that I liked the development process, or at least what I know of the development process. I don't think it was diverse enough, the people putting it together, not to criticize any of the people that put it together, but I think that it should have been a much more diverse approach to that. I think KM goes back to, why I call myself chief chaos organizer. I think there's a lot of art in that. I think that it doesn't, the standard puts things into boxes, and that, there are parts of KM that can be put into a box. Absolutely. Especially on the technology side, but it's ultimately human. Knowledge is human. Knowledge is not a box. It's not a computer. It's not a database. Those facilitate and help transfer, but knowledge is I'm going to say uniquely human. And so the standard, what I know, and I will be honest, I haven't read the whole thing. I've read articles about it, I've read bits and pieces of it, but it seems to be trying to put stuff in boxes that's not necessarily,
well, that's okay.
being able to be put in a box.
No,
so
maybe just to
you can probably tell me where I'm wrong.
No, actually, that is one reason. I mean, see, actually, to be very honest with you, when I got auditor certification, this is the question which I received. I mean, from the professionals and game professionals, they're not able to understand the standard and what is the challenges. So what I did was I put all this question, and that's why you see this book, Design Knowledge Management. Yep. So again, fundamentally for me, I believe whether it is, you call it standard, whether you call it digital transformation, end of the day, we have to do our knowledge management. The standard provides us the life cycle, more of the blocks, operation, sustain, design. So, and there are some requirements. They are giving us the governance of the framework. They're not telling the solution level. So that is it's completely ontological. In that way, that is why I was also very skeptical. I completely believe this game cannot be standardized. That is the stand I take all the time. But once I read, I found they're moving up very high level. They're not going into specifics of a system. They're looking at saying that, yes, very specifically, they have taken the knowledge development cycle and they have put the whole game life cycle as such, as a whole. Okay. So maybe I will present my book to you. I will, as a copy. I will share it with you later.
Yes.
I mean,
yes, that would be lovely. I would. Yes, thank you.
You even read and say, then we can discuss, what is your.
That would be great. Thank you.
It will be my privilege, of course. It will be. But in all honesty, yes. I mean, in fact, this is what I say. The moment we are all stuck to the name, that label itself blocks us. This is what I say. Sometimes, that's why creativity, why the moment you say radical came, for me, it's so opening. It opens up something.
Yes.
Similarly, with the moment you say KM standard, it blocks something, because the moment you hear standard, it means that, corporate is always standardized. Standardize your PPT, everything has to be standardized, so that kind of, we have that predetermined, picture in our mind, right? So that's fine. I mean, that is what it is. And I'm glad that you are doing a lot of work around this radical KM, which is essential, because I fundamentally believe if KM economy needs to grow, it needs to diverge. I mean, today we have big data, then we have various, even digital transformation or anything. they're growing. I mean, even innovation management, they're growing in, leaps and bounds. But KM is still, it's like, it's sustaining, it's neither it's moving up or going down. It's like, so that is something which we really need to some way try to expand, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I tend to agree with you. I think KM is not, I think all those other things have become the flavor of the day,
Yes.
And I think KM is past that. KM was the flavor of the day 20 years ago. And it's had its day, and there's a lot of critics out there, and yet it still is a necessary part of our organizations, because we work in a knowledge ecology or economy, and it is an ecology actually, but because of it's systemic. But so I think that knowledge, and I think, I've talked to people about knowledge management is dead, long live knowledge management kind of thing. And it is, because we need it. We don't like to admit that we need it, and it's ill-defined and all these other things, and it's got some bad baggage because of the connection to the technologies and stuff.
Yes.
But it's necessary, and we have to find a way to make it part of our organizations and make it an acceptable part of the organizations, and recognize that it's not a box. And I think that's one of the problems with knowledge management, is it doesn't fit in a box the way big data fits in a box, or the way agile fits in a box, or the way design thinking fits in a box.
It doesn't at all. It doesn't.
It doesn't.
It keeps on changing the shape, size.
Exactly, and it goes across everything, and it touches on everything, and we need to get comfortable with that. So hopefully, radical knowledge management will help people get comfortable with that uncertainty, and that ambiguity. So
no, I'm sure it will impart, and it will create awareness that knowledge management with creativity is essential. And as long as economy is developing and it's expanding, that's what I'm looking forward to. And one of the last question I had was like, how do you? I mean, I saw some of the paintings, which are really excellent.
Yeah, thank you.
Especially I like the escape red.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, all the three variants. It's very beautifully done. And
thank you.
So now, if somebody needs to really learn more about this radical KM, somebody trying to do, so where they can find more information, or what is that? Where they can approach? Maybe you could.
All they need to do is put in radicalkm.com in their web browser, and that takes you to my webpage, and there's contact form and contact information, or they can find me on LinkedIn. Yeah, but radicalkm.com is probably the easiest way to track down. There's a bunch of blog posts and articles and stuff there. Linked to some videos that I've done, links to the article that was published last year.
Okay.
I have a second article coming out in March that talks more about implementation. So there'll be a link there, once I get that up, or once that gets published in March. And so, but radicalkm.com is the easiest way to track me down.
All right. I think we had a great, topics. We have covered the great deal of topics, and I really now understand much. I'm in a much better position, being open to understand what is radical KM, and I see the essence of where you're going and what you're doing, the kind of work you're doing. I can wish you all the best, and let the radical knowledge flourish. So our KM community and our KM discipline too. Stephanie, it's been great speaking to you.
It's been
thanks
lovely.
a lot for your time. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you very much. It was fun. I enjoyed these.
Thank you. So
thank you.
You have a great day, and also a week ahead. We will see. I'm going to send the book to you.
Yes.
Maybe, yeah. Then we will catch up and see.
Yes.
And
that's
we
great.
can
Thank you.
more about things. Yeah. Okay.
Great.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, you too. Bye.